Awesome. Welcome to another totally rewarding chats with Paul Ryman. Glad you
Hello.
decided to come back again. I'm always concerned now as a new co-host that you come back.
You never
And
know.
one of the few people we've decided to invite back. And for those that don't know, David Turetsky was my first guest when we started this. He was the original
Ooh.
guest. And yet I decided to still continue to
Yeah,
do more. So
that
welcome,
that speaks
David.
more to your judgment than anything else, doesn't it, Paul?
I know.
Sorry.
Well, it makes a consistent number of bad decisions just added on. So that's
Yeah,
all
and you
good.
had me on HR Data Labs once, so I feel like I kind of owed the response, right?
There
So
you
there's a
go.
little bit of,
You were great on that too.
I'd like to think so.
Um, I like so far off to a very modest start by everybody. For those that didn't listen to the first one ever, David, can you give us your quick bio really quick, and feel free to do a quick plug because Paul already did for HR Data Labs, and
Sure.
beyond the fact that you have a beautiful neon sign behind for those that don't know.
Hi, I'm David Turetsky. I've been in the HR and consulting space in compensation and HR for over 35 years. Consulting, practitioner, executive, entrepreneur. And as Sean had mentioned, I have a podcast called the HR Data Labs podcast that's hosted on Spotify. And as well as you guys, I'm on the Work Defined Podcast Network now, which I'm very proud of. Also, we have a HR Data Labs Brown Bag Lunch, which we try and do every Friday, but sometimes we miss, where we have a live guest come on and we have people interact with them. And I'm also the author of the HR Data Doodles graphic novel series of HR-related fun times.
People should get at least one of those. I have this.
At
I
least
have
one.
the series, although they're not autographed, but I do
I'll
have
have
the
to do that
series.
for you.
Yeah, the brown bags are great. You do have some questionable guests on, as I know for a fact, on
You,
HR
you.
Data Labs. Me, which makes me wonder about
Yeah.
his decision making.
Well, I have to have Paul too, which will shore up my decision making.
Yes, well, that's the whole reason I added him as a podcast.
Yeah.
To the
Yeah. He
podcast,
gets
so that
cred.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, So, a couple quick things before we jump into what I think is going to be entertainment, and I'll just sit by the side. What do you have a hobby outside of all of this stuff?
Yeah, I consider my favorite hobby being a dad, and two kids in college now, one kid in middle school, and the trials and travails of a soon-to-be 13-year-old. So that's keeping me very busy.
Ooh, not for the faint of heart. I have an
No,
11-year-old and boy, which does mitigate some of the risk of middle school, but has different risks with middle school just the same.
yes,
So totally get it.
And I
yes,
will
having
live through you
conversations
all.
now that I cringe at. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, I
Yep.
will leave it with you all. All of mine are off the payroll and adulting, so I will sit and mock you guys accordingly.
Mock away.
Yeah. Speed round, 5 quick questions. Some you've had, so I'm going to go back and see if you answer the same. So, are you a coffee or tea person?
Coffee.
Okay. Do you prefer the term compa ratio or range penetration?
Comp ratio.
Okay. Yeah. I know. Yeah. I'm waiting to see where that went. And then, yeah. You have a weekend away. Would you rather go somewhere for a posh weekend away, or are you going to rough it out in the woods?
Definitely posh. I've
Okay.
done the woods thing. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
like bugs crawling up places.
Did it once. Good.
Yeah,
Check.
you got the bag.
Sean is the one. Like, we're still waiting for a guest
know.
to
There
side
have
with
been
Sean on
others,
this.
Paul. There have been others. I will say though, we're on a streak of it becoming more and more the minority.
That's right.
Paul, he's also now using a trailer, so it doesn't count.
It still counts. I would want to sleep in that thing.
I I consider that to be way above being on the ground in the woods.
We're at a phase of life that if there is not a king size bed, my wife
Yeah.
puts me in a different room, right? Like
Yeah.
the concept of constrained space is just not for me. I'm not a large person, but like apparently I need lots of space. So
Well, I have the two dogs, and the two dogs
Yeah.
take up most of the bed. I
That's
usually
right.
get an eighth
The,
of
dog,
the
the
bed.
dogs that we don't have that would make a big difference actually in the size of the trailer for sure.
Yeah.
The number one mental skill a goalie has to have in hockey.
Uh, I would say it's probably having a short memory.
Okay. I don't know if you know Paul.
The helmet was a giveaway, right?
Helmet was a giveaway,
There
yeah.
was definitely a clue there.
Yes.
And then the really important one, are you a crunchy or creamy peanut butter person?
Oh, creamy.
Okay. All right. So I want to say plenty of time here. So the reason, well, beyond your grade, I don't want to give you a big head, David, is for the
30
topic here was for those that didn't see it out on World at Work, the question is performance ratings in regards to merit dead or going away? And so I want you to start this off, David, and either rephrase that or kind of state your position or the thesis here.
Yeah. So the conversation that got very heated was, is a merit increase as a way of being able to reward performance, is that going away or should it go away? And Mr. Ryman and I got into a very lively conversation. That's all I remember about it, actually. I remember it being fun and lively and collegial. But the thesis behind it is that long gone are the days where we could give someone a 10% or companies gave the comp group a 10% merit increase pool. Merit increase pools have been around 2.5%, 3% for a very long time because cost of labor changes have been very small. And the ability to differentiate performance for a very small budget is hard unless you give a lot of zeros to your, not just underperformers, but even to some of your average performers as well, because we've managed a lot of those underperformers out of the organization. And so the crux of my thesis is that merit increases are getting darn near impossible to continue as a reward for performance, and that utilizing another form of pay, like incentive pay at all levels, because it is self-funding or because it can be self-funding, meaning that if the company doesn't do well and the employee doesn't do well, there's no payout, that you can provide more multiples, you can provide more opportunity, as well as more useful opportunity than what merit used to offer as an incentive for performance. That was the thesis.
Okay.
And
I
you
feel
would
like
have thought I said something against God.
what I should have worn, and I didn't think about it until just now, and I'm about to get Paul's side, is I should have worn the referee shirt.
You should have.
So just for fun, so Paul, your thoughts on that? Since this was where the genesis started.
Yeah. So I think, and you might even see it back on my whiteboard a little bit, like economically and mathematically, I actually agree 100%. Like a 5% increase versus a 3% increase, which is what, if you look at what people will build as a pay for performance merit matrix, those might be the numbers. It doesn't matter, right? You're talking about $80 a check on a $94,000 salary, right? That's not meaningful. Scale down that salary to 50 grand, it's $40 a check, pre-tax, right? So there's not a meaningful economic differentiation that happens with that sort of merit process. Full stop, right? But humans, right? People are what we're talking about here. And managers love to be able to say, I gave you more. People want to hear, I got more. So I think there is validity to, well, does that have to be in salary? Could you do it in bonus? Could you do it in something? Maybe. But not all companies have that, or there's complications with non-exempt workers and bonuses. There's, company funding can get in the way differently with bonus design. Like there's things that you have to figure out that I still think there's relevance to an anchor on salary. But how do you do it better? And how do you have the right expectations? I think is my big point these days. Like you're not really driving economic pay differentiation, right? You're driving a story where a human is hearing from their manager, you had a great year, thank you, you got more than your fair share. But it's really not that much, right? And we should stop kidding ourselves around like how economically different it really is.
I'll add and get David's perspective. My concern in kind of moving it to STI is always that the bonus pool isn't the bonus pool until the bonus pool is delivered. The bonus pool is flexible potential operating income until it goes out. And then do people stick to the rules of engagement and how much control is there? So, most people have that sliding scale of, if I'm at the, near the more entry level, I've got less control over the major number, so it's more on my performance, and then move up. Do they stick to that? And so I don't want to. I know we're being recorded, so I don't like to say this often. I agree with David, fundamentally, like practically, like you do, but I worry about the practicality of how that gets delivered, because I agree. I agree, Paul, and with David, like that amount of that you give out. I jokingly usually say, like, is it really meaningful when you're like, they're going to go home and be like, that didn't cover the Netflix increase?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and I
Like,
think,
not a good number.
yeah. And one last thought on the bonus, like, while it feels like you should be able to differentiate more, giving zeros is hard, whether it's a bonus or or a salary increase, right? So like how do you practically educate managers to feel comfortable giving less than 100? Because if everybody gets 100 on their bonus, you get the same outcome, right, at the end of the day. So it's like, how do you practically drive those differences? There are some strategies I've seen that work on the margin, but is it meaningfully different is always the big question.
All right, so let me take your comments a few at a time there, Paul. The first one is that, by the way, I'm not saying that the salary increase doesn't happen. In fact, I'm saying that the salary increase happens, and it's done as a cost of labor change, not a cost of living change, which would get, has to have a story as well. And so peanut butter the salary increase. So that's a non-story. They're going to get more, which is what everybody wants anyways, right? And because there's no more concept of really being total underperformers, that makes more sense, and that's much more fair, because the meaningful differences in performance aren't being rewarded anyways, so let's just give everybody the same there. On the other side, on the, to your points around the incentive, I totally agree, and we have to get much better about not only the mechanisms of making those decisions and communicating them, they have to be relevant to the populations that we're talking about. So for the hourly employees, whether it's discretionary or not, and it's included in overtime, okay, that's a complication we have to figure out. However, there are reasons why, for example, production facilities, manufacturers who have large hourly populations, they have a lot of metrics that they have to manage against. And the rewards are typically not individual anyways for them, because they don't do anything individually. They do it as a team. And the team succeeds and fails based on every chain in that link. Sorry, every link in that chain. It's
a
early.
Willy Wonka, strike that, reverse it, right?
Exactly. But that's the first time anybody's ever called me Willy Wonka, but I'll take it. But you know what I'm saying is that there are things we have to figure out, but meaningful differences in performance now can be on a quarterly basis.
Sure.
Understood and answered for more closely to the times when they happen than waiting for the annual incentive or merit processes where no one remembers what you did in the first quarter. Recency effect.
I buy a ton. I buy that a ton, because as I think there's opportunity with technology to go to more merit increases. Idealistic blue sky rainbows and unicorns. The problem is the budget won't be different, and now you take a 4% budget, you make it 1% a quarter. Who do you do to fundamentally there's some problems. So I like the STI quarter, David, like the recency effect is gone and tied to recent work.
Yeah, but I want to correct you though. The 1% per quarter then it gets compounded. So it's not 4%. It's much more than that.
The assumption is, you can do the math, right? So
you got to do the math on that.
But does everybody get it every quarter? How do you do it? And when do you start? The CFO would like it to start because you'd push some of it out. But yes. I don't think it's practical, because you're basically doing the same math in thinner slices, and you're taking a bad problem of a low increase amount and making it even more complex.
Absolutely. But that's why with an incentive, you don't pay it out. And this is to Paul's comment. You don't pay it out if we don't achieve what our goals were. We don't achieve our metrics, and you know about that sooner, so you can fix the year. Because if I'm giving that feedback sooner, we can still fix the year if it happens in Q1, Q2, even Q3. We can't fix the year if you've already gone through the entire year. We're paying out a performance-based pay, and people are like, "Why didn't you tell me this in the first quarter?" So there's a lot of, to Paul's point, there's a lot to that story that's necessary to close the loop on, you did this, here's the result, and here's your reward for it. Let's do better next time, or let's fix it, or do it again.
Yeah.
But can I go back, I mean, to Paul's point of it's the same as the same. How do you fund, what are the financial mechanisms to get there, David? So if you had a 4% increase, I like 4 because it's divided by 4 easier for me if we go anywhere. And it sounds optimistic. And you're going to change some of those levers to be, are you saying it's still
I'm not
4%?
saying merit's funding the incentive. I'm not saying take it down.
Okay.
I'm saying this is a net new program. For many companies, it isn't. For many companies, they already have something in place. They're going to change that.
Yeah, it's a repurposing of the portfolio is the way I've always interpreted
Exactly.
your argument. So it's if you're going to give 3 or 4% increases, just give everybody 3 or 4.
Exactly.
Call a spade a spade. Don't worry about it. Auto increase. Done. AI can make that happen. Look, I said it.
Boy.
You know, but then you've got a bonus program, and there are lots of companies where everyone's eligible, right? So the funding it is less of the concern. It's a distribution question. It's just be more aggressive with that, right? That's where your performance realm is.
Exactly.
The other concern I've always had with this, and it's partly shaped by I worked for an employer who taught me that you don't have to think this way. It's the short-termism, right? So like the more bonuses, it actually encourages more short-term thinking. And I worked for one organization that forced people to really elongate the horizon. We promote for performance. We don't pay for performance, right? So you've got to zoom out. Like 5 years here, you're going to know that you won if you're a great performer. And what we found is that encouraged people to take more risks. It encouraged people to think about lateral movement and skill development in very different ways. Because like it wasn't about hit this goal in this business unit to make an extra few $1,000s. It's learn, build something, develop, and then will advance your career. And you'll be making a lot more, right? People don't get ahead in this country by bigger merit increases. They get ahead through sort of mobility through the organization. So that's my only concern at times with focusing too much on short-term sort of incentives is that it puts us in this churn mindset of deliver now, deliver now, deliver now, when sometimes the right answer is to force a longer time horizon. And I found that as a manager easier to talk about with salary than with bonus, because bonus is always around what did we do right now, whereas salary, you can tell a story arc about how you're building, advancing. You know, it's not always just about performance, and I like that methodology or thinking a little bit better.
Yeah, and I don't think what I'm suggesting obviates either of those two.
Yeah.
I think what I'm suggesting is change the methodology of the reliance on the merit increase as being your primary source of incentivization for performance and think about other ways. And I love your example about mobility. Unfortunately, for 90% of the people, they will never see a promotion.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
People aren't going anywhere. I'm never going to retire. So Sean's screwed. And not
No,
really.
bro, I'm retiring. I'll call
you're
you
retiring
at your
before
job.
me
I'll be
because
retiring.
you have all the kids off the books.
Yeah.
But that's my point is, Paul, is that having those conversations about promotion or much more, probably more apt, job change, reskilling, taking a new strategy, those are absolutely the right things to talk about. But it's not going to be the incentive for them to perform better in the short term. And I am talking short term. And a lot of people, their horizons are, I got to pay my mortgage. I need a short-term loan because I can't wait for my next paycheck to be able to pay my utility bill or something like that, or I can't afford groceries. So my view for most of the organizations and most of the employees that are paycheck to paycheck is short-term.
Yeah. So let me give you the counter argument that we hear from employees, or I heard from employees.
Nothing less.
Right. So, I can't get a mortgage off a bonus target, right? They want to see salary. They want to see cash in hand. The bonus is not certain. I can't control the company's funding, right? So like, I guess respond to that, right? And I'm playing devil's advocate on purpose.
Sure.
Like, how would you respond to that feedback? Whereas salary, the employee understands the paycheck.
But again,
right?
I'm not taking away from the salary.
David's saying, so this is where I'm the financial vehicle piece, David. If I have it right, so this is more for me than you two. we're not changing the merit increase for the year. So I would argue don't peanut butter spread. I would say go by position and range and fix any issues TA created for me. But whatever, that's to the side, right? We're not doing it on performance is what we're not doing. That budget hasn't changed.
That's
We're
right.
taking our current budget that is for bonus and making that more formulaic over a period of time tied to performance as opposed to whatever it was before. And I would add there, Paul, one of the things there might be there's some short-term pieces in that bonus mix, and there's some longer-term stuff. How you measure that's another thing. To your point,
I'm playing back the care about my ability to buy groceries and take a vacation with my family right now, and I want to make sure I know how that's going to happen. If you give me a 6% raise or a 4% raise, that it might only be $80 a check, but that's a couple extra packs of beer.
Yeah, but you're not guaranteed to get a 6%. You're not even guaranteed to get a 3%.
No, for sure. I'm arguing from the high performer's perspective, right? So you've told me now I'm not going to raise your salary more.
Yeah.
We're going to differentiate more in bonus. Well, yeah, I have to trust you, the company, to sort of have bonuses to pay, right? I don't make profit for the company, right? Like that's the counter argument I'm making.
My biggest concern, Paul, and then sorry, David, is that bonus pool funding I have seen a lot gets decided at the board meeting that we're just not going to, we're going to pull back funding 25% to hit our margin so that we make our number that we have to do. And now the bonus pool went from 100% to 75%, adjust accordingly. And everyone in their head, if you hired smart people, is doing the math on their STI. That's my probably biggest concern fundamentally is not that I'm aware of, very few companies have gone back in at the end of the year and said, actually, we're just going to pay everyone less than their base salary for December so that we make our number. Because it is an optional thing to pay STI funded out of a bonus pool that's not controlled by the employee.
Their salaries aren't funded. They're not controlled by the employee either.
They're not, but that, I mean, have you seen an example where a company says we're not going to make our, to make our number, we're
going to cut salaries.
By January 1, we're going to reduce everyone's base pay by 5%.
What I've heard is we're going to cut staff. And that's exactly what I'm trying to avoid. More base pay is a fixed expense. It's an expectation. It happened. You gave it to them. You can't take it back. And if you take it back, you're demoting them or you're changing something. What I'm saying is that short-term incentives, the very purpose of short-term incentive is not creating that expectation. What it's creating is an expectation that if the company performs well and you perform well, there's a payout. It is completely self-funded by performance of the organization and you. Every company goes through this. Do some companies take it back? Sure. But if you're going to take it back, you're going to take it back from the executives as well as everybody else. Don't shake your head no at me because you know damn well that we're in an era of pay transparency and that has to change.
It should change. I agree 100%. But also the weird thing about the way that works is if I take money from the bonus pool to hit my profit margin and my bonus is built around at more senior levels, the profit margin or the bottom line, my bonus actually, my 75% of the pool is actually more than it might have been 100% of the lower number. Do you know what I mean?
I think the more meaningful issue is 5 points of the bonus funding is a penny of EPS that hits expectations. My stock value is affected, right? And equity is disproportionately held at the executive level. So I think it's more about gamism around I'm gonna help the cash position and it's going to boost my stock holdings. But I think that's the unusual. I mean, I think you're more often than not, David, you're right. Like if a decision is made to reduce funding in the bonuses, it's probably across the board.
And by the way, that's a publicly available thing because all those things are now included in the proxy statement.
For
public companies. Absolutely.
For public companies. Yeah. And if you're playing games, your shareholders are sure as heck going to call that out. Yeah. And there's going to be major upheaval if you're doing 5% of the population is getting 90% of the bonus pool and the rest get nothing. That's not going to play.
So semi-switching gears a little bit. Like I'm
being naive, right, Paul? But that's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, I do think there's a little bit of disclosure that doesn't fully align to the ideal, right? So what's in the proxy is how the executive plan works. And investors have actually rewarded negative discretion by the comp committee. So, hey, the math worked out to funding at 95%. We only funded at 90. Investors like that. That feels like your committee is exercising accountability for, right? But what happened to the employees? Maybe it went from 95 to 90 as well. That's not disclosed, actually, right? It's
And I'm
disclosed what's
saying
used
it
for the
should be,
executive.
yes.
It should, if it should be, that's great. That's not what's in disclosure today, right? It's just how do you affect the results of those in the
You
proxy.
have broad-based plans that can be disclosures, especially broad-based equity plans. And so
Yes,
I've
that's
seen
fair.
organizations who do that, and I applaud them for it.
Yeah, that's a choice at this stage, right? It's more if
not
your
required.
executives participate or if you choose
Yeah.
to share about how employees are rewarded. Yeah, totally fair.
But what we're talking about here, and my thesis is a fundamental change in pay for performance. And I don't think any shareholders would argue that instead of trying to solve performance on 3%, you're going to try and solve it on a 5% or more target that is quarterly based potentially, because it gives better line of sight and better chance to change, as well as being across the board. So everybody's now rowing with the same oars, the same direction. Sorry for the sculling or the whatever you call it thing. But analogy, but you see where I'm going with this? I'm saying we're trying to get everybody going in the same direction. And it's hard to say that we've got the executives going in the right direction, but nobody else is on that boat.
How do you see companies making, like, let's assume we want to do that, right? So, I mean, what are the critical items to get there? Because I think, I think what's interesting is I think if we started from scratch, all three of us are like, I like the premise. We all agree with your theory.
I don't know
think
if
where
Paul
Paul and I are getting, I agree with it. I'm more concerned about the practicality. Again, now you made me say it twice in one show that I agreed with you. Well done. But like, how do you see companies best making that move or tackling that
Yeah.
that issue?
Well, the first thing is I would talk to your board. I'd talk to the comp committee. Because the comp committee is going to be your best friend on this, or they're going to be worse ending, or they're going to say, I don't care. And obviously, before you do that, you have to talk to your CFO and your CHRO, need to be completely aligned that this is something that we want to try and do in order to be able to get all the oars rowing in the right direction, in the right way with, someone screaming from, whatever the word is, some safe word or something. But, that's the key, is making sure that you've got the right story about why you're doing this. And to all of Paul's wonderful criticisms, you have to take that into consideration as you're going through this and make it something that everybody agrees to. CFO first, and then go to your board. That's my advice. I mean, obviously, you might want to check with the CEO before you go to your board. Get your ducks in a row at leadership levels. Go to your board, and then start thinking about all the things that you were talking about the practicalities and the issues. I'm not discounting them. I think you're all right. I'm just saying that the age of the merit increase trying to solve all our ills. I mean, look, the salary budget survey that I had a webinar on yesterday. We're talking about a 3.4% merit budget.
Yeah, right.
Which I think is honestly, every time I see that number, I keep thinking healthcare is higher, and like I think it's lower than that when I've talked to folks.
Well, yeah, I totally think.
So I'm with you, David. I think that's aggressive.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Well, I think that's the one thing I definitely loudly agree with is we try to solve too many problems with one budget, right? We're trying to, fix the problems that TA has caused for Sean. We're trying to keep pace with market. We're trying to reward performance. Like, no manager is great at that three-dimensional calculus when given a pool that is 3.5%. So I'm with that. Like, I'm a behaviorist at the end of the day. So it's like, what do I want that manager to do? Like, what problem do I want them to solve, and how do I teach them to solve it? You could probably solve some of pay for performance, but you have to forget about the rest of it. And I think I'd generally actually prioritize probably market alignment and pay equity over performance because I have other levers to address that, right? To your thesis, David, I don't have a great other lever to change pay equity, right? Like, bonus doesn't help that at the end of the day.
Well, I mean, unless your story is that you pay total cash at market.
Yeah, which
and
is
you're
great
going to
until
fix.
a country in the EU says, I don't care about your bonus. I only care about your salary,
Right.
right? Like,
Right.
so I think there is some pressure on getting the
Oh
fixed
yeah.
pay. I mean, I know you were giving the sort of theoretical, but like, you know, so that's why I actually agree that you just got to think about your priorities and you might want to prioritize something else and do it well rather than ask managers to do three things
I
kind of
think the
well.
cool part, but also the part that's going to be more complex. I think the cool part is managers will be able to tie things that they understand better in their day-to-day jobs. They don't understand comp, they're not comp professionals. They can basically say what drives my business and what percent of this team's stuff. I think the complexity will then be the comp team is going to have to go to every department to grab metrics and create things
Mm,
to come with that mix.
no, I wouldn't make it that difficult. I would make it much more like like plant level, like, or if it has to be by department, you're talking about corporate groups. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well, that's where when you ask Sean, like, where do you start? For me, it's the definition of performance, right? Like, how are we going to talk about what success looks like at an enterprise level? The comp committee, the CFO probably have lots of opinions, but like, you know, codifying and understanding how am I going to communicate this to the people in that particular plant? Just use that example. Is it plant level metrics? Is it line level
Yeah,
metrics? Is it
right,
shift level metrics?
right.
Like, how are we going to codify performance for them? How are we going to codify and discuss performance for the HR function, which is a little bit devoid of outcome measures in the end of the day? Like, I think you have to be clear on
That's
that
always been an
before
age-old issue, right, Paul?
totally. But I think
Even on merit.
And then do you give them
but I do,
discretion? You know, we'll come back to do you give them discretion? Because if we're talking about the line, right, you say, actually, we're going to go on this shift. This shift's metrics for number of errors, number of whatever, but you two quickly realize that Sean is a freeloader down at the end of the shift line, you know, on the shift line. How do we figure, do you give managers discretion to your point, David? Like Sean has more errors than you guys, or do we take the shift piece? And this is why I think it's the same thing. I agree with way more ability because that bonus level is bigger. Like, how do you still deal with performance?
Well, I think you're getting into the minutia and the really good details of some of the rules you have to set up. Like, for example, if I were going to do this at a manufacturing level, I would say that only people who have satisfactory performance get the incentive. You know, that's like kind of the entry into the plan, right? And so you've kind of washed out all the ones who have had absences and who've created errors or have created safety issues and whatnot. But now you're talking about some of the minutia that is the good things you should be talking about. And in the same vein, if we were going to go fix the merit increase, I would say it first has to start with what are your performance metrics? What are your performance management tools that you're using? What are the not subjective, what are the objective things that have to be in that performance evaluation? Because performance evaluations are broken. And the fact that we use them as the basis for those merit increases scares the crap out of me. So I'd be having the exact same conversation with you in either one of these scenarios.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I
It
think it's a
affects both.
remapping. I guess I would say it's a remapping of what you thought you were doing in the merit matrix, right, with performance and other stuff, and moving it
Sure.
to your point of to a perform with a larger number so that I can create more differentiate. You're basically just adding a
Absolutely.
larger lever, right? That's the premise.
Yeah, but you're also taking the pain that Paul was talking about before about being able to pay my mortgage, and you're allowing that to happen. And by the way, Paul, I never worry about whether it's going to be a 6% or a 3% for me because I know I'm a 3% guy. And so when I go with my mortgage and they go, okay, let's look at your bonus history, and I show them my bonus history, oh, okay, yeah, it's kind of even out. I mean, it's kind of flat across the board. You have some highs, you have some lows, but it's pretty good. And when I went to get my mortgage recently, they're like, you know, so where are you for your next 12 months? Are you trending higher? And I'm like, oh, I hope so.
Yeah, of course I am.
No, I think I'm going to sit on my butt this next month or this next 12 months and actually just coast by on my base pay. So I think these are conversations that are the good next step, right? It's the what do we do about performance? How do we fix some of these underlying problems that we have with the current system? But now that we're taking the reliance off of this one yearly problem, now we can talk about how do we actually solve for it for probably a more meaningful number for people.
The biggest win for me out of all of that, like I agree, is the quarterly piece because I think anecdotally companies and managers over time have done a better job of giving feedback sooner, right? But people go to work to get paid. I will stand on that hill for a while. They go to, and so that lever is probably the most important lever. And I think still for a long time, are you doing a good job? Paul telling me I'm doing a great job for a long time, but not giving me an increase for years
Well,
does not have the same meaning because I'm like,
yeah.
put your money where your mouth is.
Let me talk about exercising this muscle too, because it's really important. If you get into a quarterly cadence of having performance conversations with people, you get a better muscle about having that discussion with people than you do having that once a year horrible conversation about, well, we talked about your performance, now let's talk about your pay. Managers suck at that.
Yeah.
Now they will develop the muscle for it better.
Yeah. Well, it's just math. I mean, anything you do, someone who's been managing for 20 years, do you get to do it 20 times or 80 times? You fundamentally are just going to be better at it. So I'm 100%
Exactly.
on board. I know being cognizant of time, people can go find this fine discussion out on the World at Work forum too.
I
or
gotta go find it again. I actually don't even remember how much fun it was the first
I
time.
haven't
As
logged
you
in
can
in a few
tell,
days.
you guys anyone can pick their poison and message David or Paul too, and will not be that hard to get a discussion going on this as you get going. The one question I like to ask at the end all the time, and it can't be get rid of performance-based merit, is if you could auto-magically fix anything else in HR, what would it be?
Good Lord. Having HR be more technically oriented towards using technology and using the tools they have at their disposal to work more efficiently and to work better.
You will not hear Paul or I complain about that answer. That is a great answer.
Cast sponsored by. No, just kidding.
Sponsored by, yeah, well, I know,
Yeah,
both of us,
exactly.
just the tech piece, which is always interesting because there's so many choices out there, obviously, but that's a great answer. I think just figuring out the complexities of getting to the right one, but that is a good one to make themselves. Because the one thing I usually tell is HR and comp, they usually don't get extra headcount and extra budget, and
No.
like they're last on that list,
Extra
and so
nothing.
leveraging everything they can. This has been super awesome. Thanks for coming back.
My
I
pleasure.
can't believe you're such a glutton and you came back, although probably just to talk to Paul.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to talk to Paul. I mean, and you, Sean, of course.
Yeah,
You.
sure. So obviously, if people like the chats, continue to follow us, subscribe on Totally Rewarding Chats. You can find HR Data Labs as well, and the Brown Bags with David Turetsky. Those are always great to listen to as well. I'll put the plug in for you.
Thank you.
And thanks all.
Yes, thank you for joining, David.
My pleasure. It's
See ya.
wonderful talking to you guys.